Hello and welcome to In the Making, a series of conversations from North Bennett Street School where we connect with a range of new voices, fields, and perspectives. Before we get into our conversation, we want to thank the many supporters that make our programs possible, including the Massachusetts Cultural Council, the Holt and Bugbee Company, and all of our corporate partners in craft. My name is Kristen Odell. I'm an NBSS staff member and host of In the Making. This evening, we're joined by Dennis Krucinski, second-generation locksmith, current facilities coordinator for a very large university, and a friend of the North Bennett Street School locksmithing program. And this evening, we're talking all about the locksmithing and facilities profession. To incorporate our students' voice into this conversation, earlier this week, I crowdsourced questions from them. As they begin or finish their locksmithing program and enter into the workforce, these are the things that they and all of us would like to know. But before we get into the questions, I want to welcome and thank Dennis for spending the evening with us here.
Hi, thank you. I'm glad to be here.
Welcome. Thanks for being with us on this
Thank you.
evening. And for our guests, as you can see, I'm here in the locksmithing program. I'm surrounded by locks, doorknobs, and material. So let's just go right into our questions. These are from our locksmithing students. They, they're eager to have any information they can from someone working in the field, and with your experience and your second generation background in this industry. What led you into this field?
Well, for me, fortunately, I guess for me, I grew up in a shop in a household where my father's a locksmith, and he owned his own business for quite a while. And so when I was actually, as I was being born or after I was born, shortly thereof, my father opened his own retail establishment. And so growing up, I played in the shop. We had our own little room in the back of it was a converted ranch style house. So we had the front was the workspace and the showroom, and then the back was an office, and then another room was our playroom where my brother and I grew up. At the shop, we would play with the doors, play with locks, play with keys. As soon as I was tall enough, I would kind of get up on a stool and just play with the key machines and do that sort of thing. So fortunately, I grew up in it, and everything just kind of fell into place eventually.
When you were a kid watching all of this happen, what was something that really jumped out at you?
You know, I liked playing with all of the lock displays,
You mean
those
like
sort of
this?
things. Yeah, we had mounted locks, and I don't have anything actually within reach. I do have a couple here in my office area, but they're kind of tucked off to the side. So they're mounted on wood blocks.
Yes.
So you have those showpiece displays that would show, customer what finish it was or whatever. So I would play with those and, just see how things worked. And there's all kinds of stuff that would come into the shop that we would see. And initially, I didn't really, I guess I was resistant probably to becoming a locksmith.
Which direction did you want to go in?
So there were a few things. I kind of wanted to go eventually into emergency management. So when I got up older and into high school and college, I started to pursue, it was just after September 11th, actually, when I graduated high school. So that was a big thing on the company or the country's stage. And the colleges that I was around, there was a program actually for emergency management to be a director. So I kind of pursued that a little bit, but I guess the way my brain works wasn't fully compatible with a traditional education. So I ended up going and doing a few different things. I actually managed a store for a large electronics retailer for a number of years. I did that, and then I got tired of that, and kind of felt my calling back into locksmithing. So at that point, I had moved away from home, about an hour away from where my dad's shop was, and found another locksmith in town there. And I actually cold called him one day and said, "Hey, here's my resume. I grew up in a shop, and I know what I'm doing." And a few months later, they didn't have a spot for me then, but a few months later, they decided that they needed to expand their shop, and I was called by them, kind of a cold call, and say, "Hey, are you still interested in this?"
Mm-hmm.
So
So
I,
you learned from just growing up in your dad's shop.
yeah, for a little bit, I did do some work for my dad. I would go out and rekey apartment complexes that they had a need for a change, and my dad was contracted for that for them. So I would do that. I learned, just stuff in the shop as I was growing up. One of his employees would show me a thing here or there, and when I was able to do math, I really, my dad will probably remember this, but I was really frustrated. He was trying to teach me how to do master keying, and I just didn't understand it, but it was something that eventually I just picked up. And so that was just kind of how things were. I lived in it, and, we had a house separate from where the shop was, but um, I spent a lot of time in that shop and just reading magazines from, uh, trade magazines that he would get when I didn't have anything else to do. I'd read those, and I just would absorb all of that.
Mm-hmm.
And eventually, it led me into where I am now, working as an institutional locksmith. I worked for a smaller college that was about 2,000 students enrollment, and worked there for a few years. And then eventually, I found that I was probably capable of more and realized I was capable of more. So then I went to a much larger university
Which is
with
a very large population.
student enrollment on the main campus is about 66,000. So,
Mm-hmm. Big
um,
difference. And something that you have said before is you going from a working in the small shop to a campus. Well, at some point when you were working in a small shop, you decided that you wanted to zero in on a certain facet of locksmithing to just tighten up your skills, maybe
mhm.
make yourself a specialist in some way. Can you speak a little bit to that?
Yeah. So pretty much my whole life, I've always wanted to do everything. Um, so hobbies and sports, and you collect the thing, and then you start it, and then you get tired of it and you move on to something else, and you become a jack of all trades and master none, or however that phrase goes. But
Right.
um, yeah, I was actually at the shop in the smaller shop, the commercial lock shop in the town that I was living at the time. It was a family run business. It just wasn't my family. Um, but I was working there, and I kind of could see that, this person does the safe work, and this person does the car lockouts and does the commercial installation work. And then where I fell at that lock shop was that I was doing a lot of the automotive car remote programming, working with those electronics and those sort of things. If someone would bring in a worn car key that looked like a butter knife, any of the locksmiths, any of the students at the school may kind of understand what that is. Um, you would have to decode it and then cut a brand new key by code so that the customer had a key to work. Um, so, there were all these different things that people were specializing in, and I didn't love the automotive stuff. I didn't hate it either, but I didn't. There were parts of it that I really disliked. We had a lot of used car dealerships that would bring in uh, car locks that were in terrible shape that wouldn't work, and we would do our magic and revive them. And that was a challenge, and that was a good skill to learn, that perseverance to get through it. But I didn't enjoy that part at all.
You knew that you did not want to go in that direction.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so I kind of um, looked at the things that we were doing, and we actually at that shop we had another college set of apartments for a college complex, and they were brand new, but the company that had installed them had made some errors, and there were keys that would work in multiple apartments that shouldn't have, and there were a lot of problems with that setup. And I was tasked with going over there and kind of figuring that out. And I ended up basically single-handedly rekeying that entire complex. And that was on my I've known about it, but that was my introduction to small format cores
Mm.
and kind of some university master keying sort of things. And I just found that I really enjoyed doing that, and I wanted to kind of focus more on that. So
And
at
you
that
had,
point,
sorry, you had
yeah,
you had already had the frame of reference of, I mean, your dad's business, what that you grew up in, he was also doing institutional
yeah,
work.
growing up, he would do primarily, commercial stuff, and then he was actually given an opportunity to go and work at a university or a college. Um, so he had actually, yeah, he was doing that,
So
and
you
I
had
kind of
that in
found
your
out,
mind. Yeah, you had sort of a framework of what that could look like as a future
right,
career being in the institutional setting.
and how that's different from being a shop owner where you get up
Hmm.
at 3 a.m. and you got to go out and do car lockouts or that sort of thing, which that was probably the biggest part that I didn't want to do and why I didn't want to take over my dad's shop.
Hmm.
But I found my way into the institutional world kind of through him also. But once I got, it was employed with the small college, and I wanted to broaden my horizons, I, found this other position at a bigger college and university, and uh,
Yeah.
that
Big jump, big jump.
moved that direction. But I love it, and it honestly, what I do now is perfect for me.
Great. Yeah. A question that another question from students. You grew up in a small shop, watched your dad go into institutional work. You've been at a small population campus and now a huge population campus. How has the field changed since you started, and what do you think the future looks like for locksmithing and security technology?
So starting out with, I don't um, starting out, with where I was at my dad's shop. Um, I grew up, we didn't have computers around as much when I was young. It makes me sound really old, but as computer technology had evolved, my dad's shop used to write all of the invoices by hand. And then we converted to a computer that would, we would have that formatted to do that. And then you do estimates through that. And then, computers have really changed a lot just in my life. And I don't feel like I'm that old. So, um,
Well, also
the
the
fact,
security technology
Mhm,
piece of it now too.
right. So, specific locksmithing things that have changed that computers have helped with. Um, I think about the code books. You get a file cabinet that has a key that says A126. You have to go to a book to look that up and figure out how the cuts were supposed to be and that sort of thing. And now it's all computerized. You type that into the computer program and it pops it right up. You don't have to cross-reference it much. It tells you what key to use, and now you can even go and go to a machine, insert the key into it, and then you type the code in and hit cut, and it automatically cuts it for you.
Hmm.
Growing up, um, my dad had a Freeman 2 key machine that I learned how to use, and even from the time that I had learned to use it up until when I was at the commercial lock shop, that was already old technology, but um, it still works, and I actually have my own now. But
Well, an earlier discussion that you and I had about this, the reframing the question as how has the field changed and what does the future look like for
mhm,
locksmithing with AI and smart locks? And you said two things that were wonderful. Your first response to that was keys are here to stay.
yeah, to some extent, yeah.
Yeah. And I guess that's in reference to, smart locks and, future-proofing this trade.
Mhm.
So, and what did you mean by that? Keys are here to stay.
So keys are definitely changing. The quick sets that, even the smart locks that we have that don't have the pin tumbler inside of them, those can be defeated. And so key technology is constantly evolving. They've actually changed things so that, you know, high security keys are becoming more implemented in certain areas. So the way our keys look, we have keys always, but I guess what I'm trying to say is that uh, we have electronic locks. We have card readers all over the campus that I'm at,
Mhm.
and we still have a key override for that. So in an emergency, if the power goes out or the electronics fail somehow, there's still a key to get in an emergency.
Mhm. And you
So
don't see that I mean, what would replace that down the
yeah,
road?
there still has to be some sort of mechanical override.
Mhm.
Uh, and as far as how the industry is evolving, I kind of thought of that too. Aside from the keys themselves, I feel like, and what I've seen is that um, we are going to continue kind of dividing up the security world into more specialties. It used to be way back when that your one lock shop would do everything, right? But today, with the technology in our automotive keys, there are locksmiths now that specialize only in automotive, key programming. I'm involved in an organization called ALOA, and that's the Associated Locksmiths of America. They just, they've kind of been adding new divisions to the organization. I'm actually part of the institutional division of ALOA. They also have an investigative division, forensics. Um, ALOA also has the safe and vault technologies.
Mhm.
And then recently, within the last year or so, maybe the last 2 years, they've uh, brought forth a automotive division that's exclusively dedicated to automotive. And I I think that's actually going on right now, where they have
And
an
and
automotive convention
and do you
that's
see that
exclusively.
separation? It's kind of goes back to what you were seeking, moving away from the small shop thing is just um, tightening up a niche,
Mhm.
area of this trade. So do you think that that's a good thing? Do you think that that's going to produce more jobs and bring more people into the
Yeah,
industry?
absolutely. Yeah. With where I work now too, we have integrators that come in that are contracted when a new building is built or whatever, to actually kind of link up all of the electronics that make that work. And that is something that's kind of like the alarm portion that locksmiths used to do. But that is in its own a specialty that Linnell is. There's different companies that do different things, but um, they integrate that system into the locks and make sure all the locks work and do what they're supposed to do, and they program it. And
Mhm. Another question from our students. They just earlier this week, and we just started the semester a week ago, so this is very early in their program. They discussed key management.
sure.
How do you approach key management in such a large complex or campus?
So that's one big difference between a small institution and a big institution. When I was in the smaller institution, we had a key control office, and there we would assign keys and collect keys. And we had two large cabinets that weighed probably literally a ton. They were full of brass keys and actual, well, nickel silver, they're the higher density keys, and so they're heavier, um, full of keys. And so when someone would return a key, we would file it in that cabinet. And then when that key was needed, we'd check to see if we had a version of that key, a new serial number that wasn't assigned yet, and we would assign that. With such a large institution, um, at a big university, that those two little cabinets in a school with 2,000 each weighed a ton. It would be impossible to do that. We would have to have an entire building just dedicated for keys sorting and that sort of thing.
Not only
So,
person power to keep all of that
right, yeah,
organized.
yeah. So, we take very good records and we keep that all electronically. And then when a key is needed, that's cut to order. We make sure that that person has that authority, and we go through that whole process of verifying that the space that they're requesting they have authorization to be in, and we cut that key. And then when keys are returned, they get destroyed. We don't save them for future use, and it kind of stinks because there's keys that might be needed for a week or 2 weeks, and they get returned, and then we destroy them. But there's just no way to
Yeah.
track those physical keys, so we rely heavily on our software, and we're actually still converting to go fully digital. We still keep a lot of paper records, but um, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
we're very careful about it and very methodical about it. And I'm sure there's been keys that have been cut that weren't supposed to be, but there's never, to my knowledge, never been anything bad that's happened. And everything is, we take very good records.
Mm-hmm. What is in any part of your career, whether it's the small shop, the mid-range smaller campus or the huge campus, what is a failure you've experienced that you've turned into a win? And this can be anything from, a personal abstract idea or physically, a lock scenario that was failing and you had to turn it around and it became a success.
So I guess relationally, um, I've been with the university that I'm at now for going on more than 4 years now. And when I first got there, my position wasn't. It hadn't construction hadn't been going on as much as it is now. There's a lot of new things going on. So previously there were very few projects, one or two at a time, and now I don't even know how many I have that I'm working on. We've got all kinds of things going on with new buildings and just rekeying places, access to restricted spaces. And one of the issues that I had was that there were some communication issues with the project managers and the processes that we had and that, our expectations.
And
And
pause there for our locksmithing
sure.
students. You had told me before, give us a sense of scale. Like a project you're coordinating and managing right now has how many doors or how many locks in it?
Yeah, so the projects that I work on can range from, we just looked at one building a couple days ago that there's a handful of rooms that are getting renovated, so it's gonna be a really small project, and probably have 15, 20 doors in that
Mm-hmm.
one. We have another building across campus that is a brand new building that has a lot of research in it, and um, it's a very open floor plan, but it's about 6 stories. I have no idea what the square footage is, but the power that feeds us, we require that our electrical panels all be locked. And so we just got an order in for 300 panel cords to be able to secure that.
Mm-hmm.
So even though
So
there's a
from
big floor plan,
15 to 300,
yeah,
situations that you need to solve.
yeah. And we've had buildings that have had, a couple hundred cores in them. So
Mm-hmm.
um, it can
So
be pretty complex.
sorry to interrupt. I just wanted to
Yeah,
give a scale of what you're
yeah,
talking about. Yeah.
yeah. So where were we?
We were tell us that failure that there was some
Okay.
communication around a project and how
So
did you
yeah,
turn it
the
into a success?
the project managers didn't understand what our expectations were. And we were getting frustrated that the project managers were doing certain things. And we actually ended up putting together a working group between the lock shop, myself and my manager, and a handful of the leadership for the project managers, and we had kind of come together and pulled together our resources and kind of agreed on, we had to make concessions and they had to make concessions, and it ended up working out really well, so that at this point I think we have a pretty good handle on how projects are running, and we're understanding their processes more, they're understanding what we're asking more, and it's just better for the whole university that all of this stuff is able to be, you know, communicated. And
Mm-hmm.
in the end, we get good buildings and good security, and uh, everyone is happy.
So communication is key.
Yeah, yeah.
That's great. A big question, and maybe this comes from, you work with Aloha and with your many years of experience in this, and you train people in your own, place of work. With trades like locksmithing and security not able to be outsourced, and with the need for skilled labor, what do you see as an opportunity to build visibility and talent for this industry? Like, how do you pass on your passion for this industry? And where do you see opportunities to keep it growing?
Well, that's a pretty good question. You know, there's a lot of information out, in on the web. A lot of I think a lot of people are finding locksmithing through YouTube, through some of the lock pickers that are out there, the lock picking community. There's a whole community around that. Um, and so, one of the things that I think we need to augment a little bit is, um, we have people that are talking about lock picking and talking about, that sort of thing, but um, the organizations like Aloha aren't really uh, kind of meeting the next generation where they're at. And I think, from what I understand, they're trying to work on that. But with if it's really hard because uh, the locksmithing community, I think in general, has been pretty tight-lipped about how we do, our sources and methods and how we do things. And I think organizations like Aloha, like the local organizations. Um, there's Penn Ohio Locksmith Association in Ohio and Pennsylvania. There's the Greater Philadelphia Locksmith Association. There's LSA in Michigan. There's a lot of different local groups, and I'm kind of from the Midwest, Northeast region, so
Mm-hmm.
those are the ones that I'm most familiar with. But there's a lot of opportunities uh, to reach younger people with some more technology and not quite be so tight-lipped about what we do, so that they can get excited about it. Because honestly, when I was growing up, I didn't know that there was such a thing as an institutional locksmith.
Mm-hmm.
And I grew up in a lock shop, and it never occurred to me that colleges and universities had their own dedicated, locksmiths. There's a lot of opportunities, for training and sales and those sort of thing too. A few of my colleagues, um, the way they found their way into locksmithing was, locally there's um, locksmith distributors or those sort of things, and they started working for them,
Mm-hmm.
selling things, and they found that they really enjoyed learning about those things, and uh, found their way into the university that I work at too. So.
That's such an interesting piece of it that I mean, I'm sure that Eddie Dacius, the head of the
Mhm.
program here, and I'm sure many people talk about this, but it's a piece I'd never thought of, is all of the other business components in this world. I mean, all of the vendors, the
Mhm.
sources, I mean, that's still contributing to,
Mhm.
a new generation in the industry. But something you just said is sticking is so interesting to me, the idea that there's sort of we're at an impasse right now where you're sort of navigating being tight-lipped because we are talking about security, which is
Mhm.
obviously why, the tight-lipped thing exists. But at the same time, trying to bring in the next generation by creating access points and making it exciting and interesting to another generation. So
Mhm.
I see that clearly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's why I'm so grateful that you're speaking with us, because you're very passionate about your industry and it comes through. You're comfortable in it. You've had a great, you're excited about it. You're passing on that excitement. And about that, what are your favorite things about the trade?
Well, my favorite things about it, um, I guess to me, the experience of being able to have a puzzle and figure it out. And sometimes we get the same puzzle over and over, and we go, "Ha, I know how to fix that one." And then sometimes our colleagues, they're the ones that have seen that, and there's a lot of collaboration that can happen. There's actually uh, security forums and groups that are out there, but also, again, we have local trade organizations, and being able to come together with people um, that have the same experiences that you do. It's good to have that resource. One of the things that I didn't, and another reason I like working at the larger university is that when I was at the small college, the lock shop was me. I was as everything. And so when I had a problem, it wasn't as easy to go to someone else and ask, hey, what do you think about this plan? But being at the university, just today, even there was one of my colleagues had a door that had been, you know, I don't even know the details of it, but um, fire department needed in and they didn't have a key, so they came in, and that door absolutely had to be secured today. So, another colleague went over and the two of them were able to solve that problem together and figure out the best way to do that. So, you
Mhm.
know, solving problems and solving puzzles and that sort of thing is really, I think, what I like most about it.
Mhm. You also, you had said that you had looked at going in a different direction professionally at a certain point into emergency services.
Hmm.
And, while we're training students for careers in locksmithing, as you have a career in locksmithing, there is an element to service and helping people in that industry. So while the goal is to have it be a career, it's an added bonus that it's a necessary and helpful service. So,
Yeah, and a lot of our, especially when you're working in with the public more so, they don't understand that, they're crisis and you're coming in to help them,
mhm,
that you're their hero, but then you're also telling them how much it is and they hate you for it. But yeah, I mean, it really is all about customer service and then helping people too.
mhm,
I guess the one thing too that I didn't quite realize is that, even with a university, you know, the people that we're working for, they're our colleagues and, they're professors and, staff, but they're also our customers. So, being able to serve them and fix their problems, it's a really, really cool feeling, especially when
mm,
you know, they need a building secured right now and you got to do it.
that's great. Do you have any words of advice for our locksmithing students?
Um, yeah, I mean, really, the opportunities at North Bennett Street School, I was pretty impressed actually when I saw recently when you had posted your photos of the welcoming things that were in store for each student. Of course, I paid attention to the lock shop, and they had their big tool belt, the toolbox and the wedge
Mhm,
kit, and those cool little things, and um, that's all really cool, and you got the tools to do the work, but the learning never stops. Everything, every day you're going to learn something new, and really no one can know everything. So I I would encourage them to experiment with the different parts of the field and find something that they really enjoy doing. And that doesn't have to be the only thing they do, but having a thing where you are the expert in. Um, I don't know what kind of careers they might go into, or that sort of thing, but um, when you're the specialist, you also get paid more too, when you're the only one that can do that. So you can, you know, be financially solvent or whatever. You can do very good for yourself if you focus on a few things rather than trying to do everything and just spread yourself so thin.
Mm-hmm.
So
That's great advice. All right. Well, we thank you so much for your time and for sharing your work history, your career, and your evening with us. So thank you all for being with us this evening. And Dennis, thank you so much for giving us your time and your expertise.
thank you very much. I appreciate it, and I look forward one day to actually going to your school and actually seeing everything there, because yeah, just not just the lock shop, but everything. It's all really
Oh, yeah.
looks really fun. So
You are always welcome. The invitation is always open for you.
thank you. I
All
look forward
right.
to it.
Thank you all. Have a great
Thank you.
night. Thanks, Dennis.